Well, if you go back into the 19th century and the early 20th century, scientists sort of did their work in there with universities. It was very independent. Sometimes it was sort of independently funded. There was not a lot of government support for research. Government support for research in the outside the government agencies themselves really grew up sort of around the time of World War II. There's a very interesting book called Tuxedo Park that talks about that, and it's when the rules were sort of set up, or the traditions were set up about how the scientific community, when it's funded by government for research, will relate to the government. And it was found through experience and a lot of good thinking about it, that it was very good to keep those aspects distinct. That is, the government is the funder. It can ask questions. It expresses the problem. It says the kinds of challenges that it faces, and it asks the scientific community to come up with some ideas for doing that. And some ideas may be good, some may be bad, some won't work, and you may not accept some for some reasons and everything. But there's a separation that is set up, and that worked very well coming out of World War II. The National Science Foundation ended up getting set up independently. A lot of the other agencies started funding universities in the same sort of mode as NSF, although they funded them around particular missions that an agency had. In our field, it might have been how to do better weather forecasts or something. And so you'd focus around a question like that, or how to do tornado warning or something. But you had this separation, and so the government was asking the questions, posing the challenges and things for the community, and providing the funding. And the community was working hard to develop the best information it could, and running a review process, and challenging each other, and trying to be the best that could come up. And so if one person came out with one thing, another one would be challenging, and you would eventually end up with this objective information. And so we've developed these kinds of systems in different fields, whether it's the National Institutes of Health and the way they fund health around the country, whether it's in this issue of climate change with a lot in universities and also some laboratories. And there's been this independence so that you can get the objective information. Well, the people that learned that experience during the war, I think, sort of were responsible and leaders in government through the 60s and the 70s and into the 80s. But a lot of them, I think, started retiring in the 80s, and you started to get a new generation that hadn't gone through and hadn't learned all that original reasons for them being separate. They were used to it being separate, but I think they hadn't understood the basis and the rationale for the independence. And so I think what you started to see was the political side saying, well, gee, can't science do things for me? Can it be on my side? Can I spin it in particular ways? And that has sort of started to grow and grow and grow. And now there's even sort of coloring of what the scientific results are, or they frame the press releases about these things. And we've forgotten the importance of having that independence. And we're going to have to go through as a country having that discussion over again. Now, the question then becomes, are there some actions that Congress or we as a people can try and take to ensure that one maybe returns to that time, to see the benefits and the tremendous growth that came in our technological capabilities by having the independence of the scientific community and the funding from government and the working together. It's going to be hard to know. That's going to be a real struggle to figure out how best to do that. I mean, there are a number of actions Congress has taken where they said, well, we're going to increase the funding for the National Institute of Health or the National Science Foundation. And those are great, but if you start coloring exactly what's done or what isn't done, then you really have the potential of not getting that freedom to advance and getting the best information. And I think we're really, as a country, going to suffer from that. There have been examples where that's happened. I mean, it happened, to take a radical example, sort of in the Soviet Union, and sometimes where they had a system where whoever was head of the laboratory, whatever they thought was sort of their view, and all the people in their laboratories would support that leader's view. And there was an incident with Lysenko, who had a particular view about how some ecological aspects work, and he sort of led, or genetic aspects work, led everybody astray off on a path that was very unproductive, and they ultimately had to dramatically change. And it's been very interesting. I've been over to Russia since the end of the Soviet Union, and they've changed the way their laboratories seem to work. I mean, the people in the worker level are asking lots of questions, and they're challenging each other, and they're going to end up, I think, advancing much more rapidly than a system where you have a leader and that person's right no matter what. That just is not a system that is going to advance society along in the way we need to find ways to live with our environment and provide a reasonable standard of living for 6 to 8 to 10 billion people on this planet, given the resources we have.